But it's not just a passport. This is a life-changing document because it means I have the power and the freedom to live up to my potential, to not limited to access any opportunity that comes my way. With this document, it gives me the feeling of being included in a society, being visible. You know, when you're stateless, you're just like, you live in the shadows. You can't participate actively in the society in terms of education, in terms of work, in terms of even access to medical care. So for me, this one is like my life. Let me say, yeah.
Wonderful. Absolutely. And Noor, what did gaining a nationality mean to you and your family?
Yeah, so we were able to resettle in Australia, and then I had access to education. I graduated with my bachelor and my master's from the University of Sydney. I was able to access services such as healthcare and so on. But besides the access to healthcare and services, when I retrieved my Australian citizenship and passport, it was actually the first time I actually felt like a human with dignity and care. And because of the ongoing Rohingya displacement, we've had a mass displacement of Rohingya in Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia recently. And I was able to co-found a refugee-led, Rohingya-led, and women-led organization called Rohingya Maya Fainor Collaborative Network. Maya Fainor just means women in our language, and this is a way for us to work on cultural erasure, ensuring that our language is always there and not forgotten. So we are a women-led, Rohingya-led organization comprising of 8 Rohingya women. Out of the 2.8 million Rohingya worldwide, where we've been completely dispersed, there are more Rohingya outside of Burma than inside. Only 1% of the 2.8 million Rohingya hold a passport, and I'm part of that 1%. So we feel extremely privileged, but also needed to amplify the voices of our people that do not have the legal protection that we do.
And both of you have just done that, and I'm very inspired by both of you, but incredibly proud of the two of you. Also very hopeful that 2 such remarkable young women have been able to speak on this platform. So can we just give Noor and Nicosia a round of applause? It takes great courage to speak. Thank you. Can I get you to take a seat? Very powerful stories, I think you'll agree with me. Now, both of you, your experiences remind us not only of the human impact of statelessness, but also the hope that comes with achieving recognition and belonging. We are about to move on to our first panel discussion. If you just give me one moment, I'm going to remove this microphone. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. As we just heard from Noor and Nicosia, statelessness is not an abstract issue. It's a deeply personal human reality, but it can be solved. And that's what brings us together here today. This year marks 10 years since the launch of UNHCR's I Belong campaign, a global effort to end statelessness. Over the past decade, this campaign has brought significant progress. New laws, policies and commitments from countries around the world have helped hundreds of thousands of people finally gain the nationality they deserve. In the next session, we'll reflect on the successes and lessons learned from the past 10 years of the campaign, and we're going to look ahead to the most critical steps we must take to truly end statelessness. We'll hear from a distinguished panel of experts, each of whom has played a vital role in this fight. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce them to you now. Mr. Veper Hajiyev, a permanent representative of Turkmenistan to the United Nations Office in Geneva. Mr. Jean Uema, National Secretary and Vice Minister of Justice of the Government of Brazil. Mr. Chris Nash, Director of the European Network on Statelessness. Welcome to all of you. let's dive straight into the discussion. I think I'll bring my first question to you, Mr. Vepa Hajiev. The government of Turkmenistan has announced in September that it has resolved all known cases of statelessness within its territory. I'm going to repeat that. Has resolved all known cases of statelessness and has fully implemented its national action plan to end statelessness. So first of all, a huge congratulations on this achievement. Can you please share with us what was the key to this success?
Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency High Commissioner Grandi, thank you for opportunity to speak today on such an important topic as the elimination of statelessness in our country, Turkmenistan. We are honored to share the key factors that have allowed us to achieve this significant milestone. First and foremost, Turkmenistan access is due to its unwavering commitment to international standards in the field of human rights and statelessness, as well as our firm adherence to the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. In particular, in principle of leaving no one behind has been at the core of our efforts. These initiatives, launched by the national leader of Turkmen people and continued by the President of Turkmenistan, have played an important role in this process. These efforts are aimed at creating a just and equitable society for all, regardless of migration status. Turkmenistan is an active participant in key international conventions such as the 1954 Convention relating to the status of stateless persons and the 1961 Convention on the reduction of statelessness. This commitment has been reflected in our national legislation, which aligns with international standards and ensures the protection of fundamental rights for all individuals, including stateless persons. One of the key steps has been the integration of citizenship principles into broader national development strategies, in line with our long-term sustainable development plans. Through legislative reforms, Turkmenistan guarantees citizenship to any child born on its territory who would otherwise be stateless. This is an important element in preventing new cases of statelessness, as well as in ensuring equal rights for women and men regarding their acquisition, change, or retention of citizenship, regardless of marital status or the citizenship of a spouse. As you rightly mentioned, the successful implementation of the National Action Plan to end statelessness for 2019-2024 has been made possible through close cooperation with international organizations, particularly the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Together, we strengthened procedures for determining the status of stateless persons, creating fair and transparent process that grant citizenship to those who have been deprived of it. As a result, more than 32,000 people, including refugees and stateless persons, have acquired Turkmen citizenship in recent years. Particular attention should be drawn to the importance of biometric identification and the digital modernization of civil registration systems. In 2020, we introduced important legislative reforms, including a new Civil Status Act, which guarantees the registration of all births, regardless of the legal status of the parents. This law ensures that every child born in Turkmenistan has the right to a name, identity, and citizenship, effectively eliminating future risks of statelessness. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize that our success has been achieved through a combination, a strong political will, legislative reforms, international cooperation, and the active modernization of identification and registration systems. All these efforts, initiated by leadership of Turkmenistan, have resulted in the resolution of all known cases of statelessness in our country. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hajiev. Now I'll turn to you, Mr. Uema. Brazil has been a global leader and a key regional actor for advancing prevention and response to statelessness in the Americas. And Brazil has also made progress at the national level. Can you please share some examples of key steps that you've taken? Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks, High Commissioner Filippo Grandi. Thanks, Madam Chair, Anita Hani, colleagues of the panel. Brazil has a constitutional commitment to granting nationality to individuals born in Brazil, regardless of their parents' nationality, to descendants of Brazilians born abroad, and to those who intend to reside in Brazil permanently. This generous decision by the Brazilian Constituent Power in 1988, further refined by two subsequent constitutional amendments, is our first step in preventing and combating statelessness. As we consider the right to nationality a fundamental right inherent to human beings and an essential condition for the possession and the exercise of human rights, like Nur Aziza and Noisa Dub said for us. We believe that the right to nationality is an inherent prerogative of every human being, which must be guaranteed to those within the territories of nation-states. Therefore, we urge all countries to adopt in their constitutions or laws or executive decisions, as Brazil has done, the broad right to nationality. Brazil also is proud to be one of the few countries that have acceded to both the 1954 and 1961 Conventions on Statelessness, respectively in 1996 and 2007. In 2017, Brazil underwent a relevant transformation with the adoption of a new migration law. The law represented a concrete answer to the Global Action Plan to End Statelessness, which had set out the commitment to grant protection status to stateless migrants and facilitate their naturalization. For the first time, our legislation included an entire section dedicated to the protection of stateless persons and the reduction of statelessness. Its main innovation was the creation of a statelessness determination procedure in force since 2018. This procedure is now accessible online through a platform called Cisa Patridia. While the person waits for the request to be analyzed, she or he receives a residence permit. Recognized stateless persons will qualify for naturalization through a simplified procedure after only 2 years of residence. Recognized stateless persons will also have access to family reunification procedures even before becoming a Brazilian citizen. Among them, the first to be naturalized as Brazilian citizen were the activista Maha Mamo and her sister. It's a great honor to acknowledge the presence of Maha Mamo with yours here today. At the regional level, we highlight the adoption in 2014, during the first year of the I Belong campaign, of the Brazil Plan of Action in the framework of the Cartagena Plus 30 process. The document sets goals for Latin America and the Caribbean over the next decade, coinciding with the period of the campaign. One of its 8 chapters is dedicated to statelessness, with goals related to the accession to the stateless conventions, the creation of determination procedures, and the facilitation of naturalization process. This was the first time the Cartagena process included statelessness in its objectives, and over that decade, Latin America witnessed significant progress. Before concluding, I wish also to highlight that Brazil announced last year the decision to adopt a national unified policy for migration, refugee, and statelessness. 6 working groups were created to discuss the proposal, with the participation of the federal government, states, cities, civil society, refugee lead organizations, and UNHCR and IOM offices in Brasilia on a wholly of society approach. We believe this new law will further strengthen the significant progresses we have already made. The creation of the new global alliance to end statelessness is also an opportunity to renew our national efforts towards what is left to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Uema. And now, Mr. Nash, I'm going to come to you. The I Belong campaign has coincided with increased civil society advocacy on statelessness. Can you describe how this campaign has helped advance your work? And what are some of the key achievements? Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. And when the I Belong campaign launched back in 2014, I well remember the excitement many of us working on statelessness felt to see the issue get such visibility in the mainstream media, with the then High Commissioner, Antonio Guterres, doing a global tour of TV studios. These catalytic visibility moments are critically important, and their impact cannot be overestimated, because if you can't see a problem, you can't fix it. This increased awareness has also made space for civil society to act. I co-founded the European Network on Statelessness around this time, and since then we've grown to be a civil society alliance with over 180 members in 41 European countries, working to deliver change through law and policy advocacy, capacity building, community engagement, and awareness-raising activities. The I Belong campaign has provided a valuable halo effect, helping to amplify several regional advocacy campaigns that we've run over the last decade. For example, our Stateless Kids campaign to ensure every child's right to acquire a nationality, our Roma Belong campaign to address Roma statelessness, and our Stateless Journeys campaign to improve the identification and protection of stateless people in a migratory context. These campaigns, alongside ongoing work by UNHCR and other partners and stakeholders, have certainly moved the needle on statelessness, and there has been real progress in the continent over the last 10 years. Let me just give you 3 examples. Firstly, 9 European countries have introduced or improved safeguards in their nationality laws to prevent childhood statelessness. Secondly, there has been real momentum towards reducing cases of statelessness among Roma and other minority groups in the Western Balkans, with North Macedonia leading the way with a series of legal reforms that have left that country close to resolving all known cases of statelessness. And thirdly, several European countries have introduced stateless determination procedures, without which many stateless people can't end their limbo or rebuild their lives. The recently adopted EU Migration and Asylum Pact, which the High Commissioner referred to earlier, for the first time includes binding provisions for member states to identify and record statelessness. And as I said at the beginning, if you can't see a problem, you can't fix it. In conclusion, let me say that it's right that we gather today to celebrate progress and to give visibility to the issue of statelessness. But equally, we need to be candid in recognizing that we still have a long way to go to end statelessness, either in Europe or globally. We therefore need to redouble our efforts and to use today's gathering as a platform to unlock much-needed resourcing and action to address statelessness. In particular, it will be incumbent on UNHCR to continue to show leadership and to increase rather than decrease its resourcing and prioritization on the issue. It will also be imperative that all stakeholders engage with and embrace the rich and exciting potential for progress through the new Global Alliance to End Statelessness, which will be the focus of the next panel. And underlying all of this, it is critical that we continue recent momentum to better center stateless people and to enable them to claim power as leaders of change. And we heard that so powerfully earlier from both Noor and Azizi in terms of their powerful contribution. I will leave it there. Thanks, Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Nash. Actually, I'm going to come back to you because I would like all three of you to, whilst we've got everybody in the room here, to maybe, from the perspective of the work you've done in your country, to tell us very briefly what you see as the most critical action to effectively prevent, I know it's a big question, and resolve statelessness, but kind of almost the top line, you know, what can people instantly think about doing? Let's start with you, Mr. Nash. So just seeing as you were in the flow.
Thanks, Anita. And I suppose I won't repeat what I just said, but I think in this gathering, I think it's particularly to ensure that statelessness is always visible in these discussions. So to make sure that it's mainstreamed through the Global Refugee Forum and other processes. You know, we know that statelessness is both a cause and a consequence of forced migration, and yet too often the issue remains, you know, insufficiently visible on discussion agendas. And I mentioned resourcing, and I can only reiterate, you know, how limited resourcing for work on statelessness is generally, but particularly for civil society and stateless-led organizations and communities. So hopefully the Global Alliance, you know, through components like its online marketplace, can help address that. But it will need, obviously, you know, private foundations, but also governments, and, you know, to provide bilateral funding if the Global Alliance is really to fly and deliver the progress which it has the potential to do. So I don't want to tread on the toes of the people who will follow in the next panel, but I would urge everyone to engage with that discussion, to join the Global Alliance, and for states to become solution seekers so that they can translate pledges into concrete law and policy reform which improve the lives of stateless people across the globe. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mr. Hajiev, the same question to you as Turkmenistan has been successful. What I heard from what you said earlier was that you took a decision as a government to grant everyone citizenship, which on the face of it seems like a very simple solution, but actually we know it's a lot more complicated than that. So what advice would what advice would you give everyone in the room today based on your experience? It doesn't matter, either one of you. It's the same question to both of you, so Mr. Oema, why not? Thank you.
Thank you. For us, the most important was to regulate and create a mechanism to recognize stateless people. Also, granting naturalization within a small period of time is a very relevant for whole process. And you think use solo, the naturalization by use solo, or the recognized nationality by use solo, or to all people who born in the territory of the states, is a very important political. Making way for a speedier integration process is very important too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the issue of statelessness persons is very important for all of us. And due to our commitment, Turkmenistan, as I already mentioned, realized a national plan of action for to end statelessness for 2019-2024. I think the world society need to work more active and more comprehensive for endless of statelessness, because stateless persons need to more rights to be elected, right to education, etc. That's why three main pillars that we used in our strategy: political willingness, legislative reforms, and international cooperation. Because for us, UNHCR is one of the most important partners, and we made this kind of success just through our comprehensive and consistent cooperation with UNHCR. But at the same time, I think civil society is most important, and I think we need to be more active. I mean, our governments, we need to be more active in cooperation with civil society, with NGOs. It's one of the main important topics that our country feel when we realize our program for endless statelessness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we should get the final say on this from the two young women who spoke so eloquently about their own experience at the beginning of this section. So, Noor and Nasizi, what are your recommendations for this audience to effectively address statelessness? And I'm actually thinking about what Mr. Nash said about if you can't see it, you can't fix it. And you couldn't even tell your teacher because you understood that he would not even comprehend that you don't have papers. So why don't we start with you, Nasizi? Why don't you tell us what you think the solution is?
Thank you so much, Anita. Okay, the I Belong campaign is over, and we're starting another journey. So in 10 years, are we still going to have the same conversation? If we're talking about an inclusive world, if we're talking about sustainable development, it will never happen if there's still people who are still stateless. We need to break this cycle. It's actually a solvable thing. It requires collective efforts from different organizations, from the affected persons, and from different governments. So my recommendation is for us to work collectively to address statelessness, because it's actually solvable. Yes.
Thank you. And Noor?
I wish I had the answer to this. Can you hear me? Oh, perfect. I wish I had the answer to this, but I can speak on the issues of Rohingya in Malaysia because I have the lived refugee experience, and I did visit my community just a couple of months ago that are currently living in extremely dire conditions in Malaysia itself. So, as you know, Malaysia is not a convention, part of the 1951 Refugee Convention, and without documentation that leads to a cycle of violence for Rohingya. In Malaysia, when I visited, I spoke to the women, and they spoke about how the lack of documentation doesn't allow for their children to attend schooling, and if the children cannot go to school, then the parents cannot go to work, and it becomes an ongoing cycle. So I guess the key to this is the need for protection for Rohingya that are already displaced in the region, and being stateless has become a key barrier for Rohingya to strive in host communities. And I myself didn't have any schooling for the first 8.5 years of my life until I went to Australia, and this cycle of poverty is only going to continue if we don't protect Rohingya that are already displaced in the region.
I'd like to thank you both, Noor and Nasizi, for travelling quite a long way, both of you, from Australia, and for the first time for you, Nasizi, out of Africa to come and address the delegation here today. Thank you. What your thoughts and what you've had to say has been invaluable. I'm sure everyone has paid a lot of attention to what you've had to say, and also thank you to my panel as well. Thank you very much. It's now my great honour to introduce the world-renowned soprano, Ms. Barbara Hendricks, UNHCR's only honorary lifetime Goodwill Ambassador, who's been a timeless advocate for refugees and stateless persons for nearly 40 years. I'm not trying to date her at all there. In 2009, she was the founding chairman of the board and is still an active member of Sweden for UNHCR, one of the UNHCR's most successful national partners for fundraising. Ms. Hendricks has used her voice to shine a light on those who are often unseen. Today, she will share her personal reflections on the I Belong campaign. Ms. Hendricks, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Anita. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and Filippo. Imagine you have no legal identity documents, no legal residence. Your children could not be registered at birth, so they can't go to school or have health care. You can't work legally, and you are afraid at every moment to be arrested because you are unable to prove your identity. This scenario is hard to imagine for those of us for whom belonging to a nation is self-evident and necessary in order to participate in society. For millions of stateless persons in the world, this is no mental game. It is their daily reality. They are alive, yet they don't belong anywhere. On the 10th of December 1948, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted, after the horrors of World War II, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article number 1, all human beings are born equal and free in dignity and in rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should behave toward one another in a spirit of sister and brotherhood. And then Article 14, everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. The 1951 Refugee Convention built on these fundamental rights and established the United Nations High Commission for Refugees as its guardian. The refugee agent was mandated to lead and coordinate international action to protect and safeguard the rights and well-being of those forced to flee persecution and conflicts, those uprooted and stateless. When the UN adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 76 years ago, I was just 20 days old. My parents never heard about this declaration, but they knew all too well the Jim Crow laws of apartheid that segregated the races in America's South. I was, for all intents and purposes, born stateless in my own country. I could not benefit from the same protection under the law, nor exercise the same rights afforded to every white girl born on that day in Stevens, Arkansas, where I was born. When the Civil Rights Voting Act was signed in July 1964, after 300 years of slavery and 100 years of apartheid, I became a full citizen, as described in the U.S. Constitution. Belonging to a nation means having all the rights of a citizen, and more importantly, the duties and responsibilities of citizenship that are the very actions that shore up our democracy and ensures freedom for all. At age 15, I officially belonged. When the UNHCR invited me to become one of its first Goodwill Ambassadors in 1986, I saw it as an opportunity to put into action on a wider scale my sincere belief that my inner peace and peace in the world must be founded on the principles of human rights. During these nearly 40 years, I have drawn much inspiration from my dedicated UNHCR colleagues in the field who devote their lives every day. Some have even lost their lives, doing invaluable work for the refugee cause. I have been humbled and have drawn encouragement from so many refugees and stateless persons that I have met, especially the women. When I am feeling my most discouraged, I need only to think of them. They face with incredible dignity and courage the nearly insurmountable difficulties and dangers of refugee life for women and girls. In 2014, when the then High Commissioner Antonio Guterres launched the 10-year campaign to end statelessness in the world, I asked immediately to work on the campaign. But only then did I become aware of the scope of statelessness, the millions who do not belong, who live as invisible non-citizens. During these past 10 years, many mothers of stateless children have spoken to me passionately of their hopes and dreams for the future. I met Elise in the Côte d'Ivoire, who could not contain her joy after the ceremony where her 2 children finally received their birth certificates. Her dreams are no different from the dreams that we all have for our families, for our children to grow up and prosper, for our families to be able to live in peace and to be able to contribute in a positive way to a community that recognizes us as fellow human beings. Elise's family is among the many who have benefited from the numerous achievement of the I Belong campaign. Entire population groups have been granted nationality, and important legislation has been adopted to prevent statelessness. There is still much more to do for those who are still waiting, feeling forgotten and fearful, suffering silently in the shadows and/or voiceless. Often during my concerts, there comes a moment during which I have the impression that the audience and I are experiencing the music as one, vibrating as one string. I believe that the place within us where this vibration takes place is the same place from which the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has sprung. In a brief instant, we are reminded of the truth of who we are, that we are all connected and are all members of the family of humanity. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights shows us that each one of us is a valued member of the family of humanity. The Refugee Conventions encourages us to care for one another. The I Belong campaign has been an inspiring prelude to the global alliance to end statelessness in our lifetime. And I will continue to raise my voice until we reach that goal. Sometimes I feel like a mother's child. Sometimes I feel like a mother's child. Sometimes I feel like a mother's child, a long ways from home, a long ways from home. True believer, a long ways from home, a long ways from home. Sometimes I feel like freedom is near. Sometimes I feel like freedom is near. Sometimes I feel like freedom is near, but it's a long ways from home, a long ways from home. True believer, a long ways from home, a long ways
Incredible. Ms. Barbara Hendricks using her voice to say some incredibly powerful words, but also using the universal language of song that just created pin drop silence in this room and affected us all on a very basic human level. So thank you so much, Barbara. Once again, thank you to my panel. To discuss the progress that has been made through the past 10 years on the I Belong campaign. The campaign has shown us that with political will and coordinated action, we can achieve real life-changing results in the fight against statelessness. The I Belong campaign may be concluding, but our work is far from finished. In fact, we're at a pivotal moment. Today, I'm honoured to help introduce the Global Alliance to End Statelessness, a new multi-stakeholder initiative that brings together governments, civil society, international organisations and stateless communities in a collective push to finally eradicate statelessness. Before we begin our panel discussion on this, we'll hear from some of the key actors involved in the Global Alliance who will share their reflections on why this initiative is so important and why we must all come together to join it. Let's take a moment to watch this video.
This is how we end and address statelessness from ever happening in this world, by working together. Change simply isn't happening fast enough for the millions who are stateless and denied their fundamental human right to a nationality. But united, we have the power to accelerate known solutions that will eradicate statelessness once and for all. But it will take a whole of society approach, a coming together like never before, a global alliance to end statelessness.
I'm so excited about the Global Alliance to End Statelessness that we are launching today. I believe it's a powerful way of working together to accelerate change, because together, our collective action propels effective solutions to wipe out statelessness.
Joining the Global Alliance reaffirms Thailand's determination to resolve statelessness in our country and to advance global cooperation to end statelessness worldwide.
As members of the Global Alliance, the HCNM and ODIHR are committed to supporting the 57 OEC participating states to prevent and address statelessness, as outlined in our joint pledge. By doing so, we hope to foster a sense of common belonging, thereby contributing to long-term peace and stability.
It allows for a transformative vision to make statelessness a relic of the past, so that everyone has equal access and the right to a nationality. This is about rolling up our sleeves and getting things done, side by side by side, supporting legal reforms to ensure everyone enjoys the right to a nationality and that statelessness is prevented from ever happening again. Initiatives to raise awareness and promote inclusion. Advocacy to drive policy changes and international support. We must act now. Because at heart, this is about people and the fact that everyone deserves to enjoy the fundamental human right to a nationality without discrimination. Join us now at statelessnessalliance.org.
So we just heard how the Global Alliance to End